Welcome to the Consummate Athlete podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete podcast. Peter, how's it going?
It's going well. We are fresh off of, vacation. I don't think either of us like to say vacation, but I think that's what we might have just had.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this is the Consummate Athlete Rome edition, or Rome Seaside edition, I guess. We are hanging out just in the city by the Rome airport. I really enjoyed a nice beach run this morning after what has been a just fantastic week on a bike tour with Ingamba up in Tuscany. Oh my gosh. When I say the biking, the food, the wine, everything, just gorgeous is really the only word that works for it. And we'll do a whole episode talking about bike tours and sort of what we learned. We haven't really ever been on a bike tour just as straight up participants, so it was eye-opening and fantastic, and yeah, had a great time.
Yeah, quite spoiled.
Very spoiled.
It was nice to be. I haven't ridden a road bike. I think we had either 25 or 28C tires. I don't remember what it was, but narrowest tires and very light bikes, and so it was nice just to cruise along without a lot of extra effort. It was very nice. So if you do have road tires or a road bike you've been ignoring, I encourage you to enjoy that. The free speed.
For sure. I will say though, the one thing that I did not love was the damn Garmin computer setting where it would pop up when a climb was happening. I feel like it just makes you more scared of the climb because you're like, oh no, a climb's coming. This is going to be bad. And then B, for some reason, sometimes it would pop up that oh, the next 4K, you're about to do a 30-meter climb. And you're like, that's not a climb, that's just road. So I feel like that's a setting I would turn off on my cycling computer next time for sure. My Garmin watch was also just continually telling me I was detraining at a rapid rate. I guess because I turned the heart rate off a couple months ago. So for some reason, it's decided that it just hates me and just wants me to feel bad about myself.
Could be, yeah. I mean, you are not running a 100-miler anymore, so it might also be telling you the truth, but sometimes the truth hurts, I guess.
I mean, I'm doing plenty. I'm not working out. Anyway, yeah, awesome trip. Just super, super fun. I'm really excited. We fly back tomorrow, but I'm turning right around and going to Savannah College of Art and Design in Atlanta to do some talks about Strong Girl Publishing and the Shred Girls books and all that kind of stuff to a lot of students there for a couple days. And then heading to actually hang out with the Human Powered Health crew and do some testing and bug their experts on Friday before I finally go home. So, the usual mayhem around travel for us. Yeah, it's been great. And honestly, I'm looking at it on the desk right now. So let's just throw it in here. AG1 from Athletic Greens has been very critical on this trip where we're, different time zones, long flights, long travel days, and just, even just out of our eating element, out of our usual routines. Being able to have one thing that has your vitamins, your minerals, your probiotics, prebiotics, adaptogens, greens, just everything kind of all in one has made traveling feel just a little bit better.
That's right. And it has that NSF rating that we really like. You mentioned the travel packs we really like, but it comes in sort of a large container that you can use at home. And then if you do use our code and the website link, you can get these 5 free travel packs.
Plus a year of immune-supporting vitamin D, which now 'tis the season, if you will, to make sure you're getting your vitamin D, boosting your immunity as we hit sort of that cold and flu time of year. So you can find out more at drinkag1.com/MollyH. Again, drinkag1.com/MollyH. We have a link to it in the show notes. Also, I'm just saying, I know it's still a little early to be thinking Christmas, but I do think it's actually a great Christmas present for I've gotten it for my dad as a present and just kind of keep the delivery going. And it's just a great way to ensure that he's getting in good nutrients on I hope daily basis, but the reality is maybe a couple times a week. But you know what? We're trying. We're doing what we can.
For sure. So we have 2 questions today.
We do.
2 great questions. These ones are around training plans. Somewhat directed towards our training plans, but I think probably applies to any training plan or just taking on a training plan, considering a training plan. built by a coach, or something on the internet, something from a magazine or something. When you're looking at a plan, you're going to have questions about it. So there's two sort of good ones and common ones we get today. Did you want to give sort of a teaser of that?
Yeah, for sure. And before we do, I'll say, if you go to consummateathlete.com, if you go to the shop section, you can see a lot of our pre-made plans. We also have links to them in the training plans. And I think this is something we'll come back to a bunch of times. If you are someone who has sort of these disparate goals, so both of these questions sort of are around kind of almost having other goals, whether we're talking about just what someone wants to do for fun, it's their goal to be able to ride with their group a couple times a week, or, they have a strength training goal, but they also have a cycling, a race coming up or some other goal in cycling.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time when you have kind of these multiple things you're working towards, it really does help to either get a custom plan built just for you and for your schedule, and or even just have a phone consult with a coach to just kind of talk over how you personally can work this in. If you're hearing any plane noise, we apologize for that. We are literally outside of the airport.
That's right. Yeah. And so it's often people will get these stock plans, which are also cheaper. I call them stock, and we've pre-made whatever, but it's a plan that I've made that says like boost your FTP in 2 weeks, or 3 weeks to your big mountain bike race, which we might call a build plan.
Do you have 3 weeks? I don't think
Sorry,
you're already 3
months. 3 months, 2 months to your big mountain bike race, your gravel race. The base plan is one of our best sellers, is the off-road base plan. It's for cyclocross, gravel, or mountain. Any of the disciplines, I think it's a great base plan. So it gets you started in the season. And then you sort of pick your discipline when we get more specific in that build phase.
And we do even have a couple even longer term ones for big races. So we actually have, I think, a Leadville and an Unbound one that both start at the beginning of the
January.
year, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're sort of built, you could call them goal plans, where they're built towards some sort of goal, whether that's like a fitness goal or like an event goal. But the trouble with a stock plan is, you're guessing at the person, they're general, right? Who is the person that's going to buy this? In a lot of cases, even what races are they doing, right? There's going to be other events during the calendar. What are their current, what is their current fitness? What tools do they have? Do they like to mountain bike and gravel ride, or maybe they're road and gravel? So there's so many variables, right? That the stock plan can work really well for some people. It gives you workout ideas, but it is sort of limited because you're going to have these questions that pop up.
Mm-hmm.
And some people can adapt it, or their life fits into that pretty well. But then other people want to do another sport or have a really different schedule or are going to race every weekend. And so it gets more complicated, where though that would be when you look at, we have this 3-month made for you plan, which is a unique product that only we offer, where I build the training plan for you based on your plan and or your races and the equipment you have in your schedule. Or you could go up to coaching, would be like the logical thing, right? We always say, if you have bold goals and a variable schedule, you're probably looking, coaching is going to be worthwhile because you can adapt that, week to week. So that's sort of the spectrum of things we offer, but hopefully explain sort of why those general plans might, be tricky in some situations.
For sure. Okay, so the first question was around group rides, fun rides. So how do I fit group rides and fun rides into a training plan, or even when working with a coach?
Sure.
Where do you start?
Well, it's common, right? You'll often hear, "Oh, I don't get coaching or don't follow a training plan because I like to do group rides." Or you'll see that what I don't like to hear is, someone's gotten coaching or a training plan and they stopped doing group rides, because they're seriously training now.
Right.
So in a lot of plans that I build, whether that's for coaching clients or training plans, I'll put, maybe the Saturday ride will say group ride, or do 3 by 15 minutes sweet spot, as an example workout. So it says or, so you do the group ride or you do the workout. And so I do a lot of those. And some people will make the plan and we'll just put group ride because they always do the Saturday group ride. We won't even put in an or workout. More and more I do, because things like weather and just schedule disruptions, it seems like a lot of people skip stuff maybe more often than they used to. I don't know. But that would be how I fit it. Now, the caution would be, if you're the type of person who just randomly does group rides when you feel like it, and just you never ride your bike without doing a group ride, then perhaps training plans don't make sense for you, right? And that doesn't mean maybe you wouldn't achieve your goals, but it would be, if you're not achieving your goals and you're that type of person, then maybe you do need to consider some sort of training plan where there is some sort of rhyme or reason to what's happening most days of the week.
For sure. And I think there is something to be said for the honesty around what your group ride is and what your group ride isn't. Because for some people, group rides are the throwdown fest of the week. And I mean that either in like a, they're really long and pretty challenging with the duration because the group is just going forever, or they're really hard because you're in with a bunch of men or women who are just kind of constantly throwing down these weird attacks, and you're like, why are we attacking on this group ride?
Mm.
Or like the group ride actually is supposed to be like that, and that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Flip side, there's a lot of group rides that are super chill coffee rides,
Mm-hmm.
or even like they're long but they're slow, right? They are meandering, they have long breaks. You're in a group the whole time, so you're very infrequently on the front. So by the time you finish, your, average power has been like 30 watts or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which again, happens. But if that was what you were doing on Saturday versus like a, 5 hour ride that was supposed to have some sweet spot and be done at endurance pace, then you're just going to have a mismatch of like your group ride didn't really match up to the type of ride you were supposed to do today.
Mm-hmm.
Versus that coffee ride or that really slow meandering ride might be great if Sunday your ride is supposed to be an easy 90 minutes or an easy 2 hours.
Right. Yeah. So it really is, what is the ride, right? Again, group rides can look like so many different things. It could be you and your friend riding side by side, sticking to very strict zone 2, if you will, right? So very aerobic, very steady. There's not a lot of coasting. But a lot of group rides, there is, if you look at the amount of coasting, so the amount of time your cadence is 0 to 15, say, a lot of people could collect that data. Like if you just look at a Training Peaks dashboard, or I don't know if Strava would report this or not, I would think it would, where you can see the cadence and you set the threshold where you want, but let's say 0 to 15 or even 0, like just 0 to 5 as a bucket, that's usually presented in the dashboard. So you'll see, this is true of people riding in the city too, where they would have an hour out of a 4-hour ride. So 25% of the ride is spent coasting. And so is that what you meant when you said 4 hours of endurance, or did you intend to keep your pedals moving? And this is where people will go down the like I should always ride indoors thing, because indoors is more efficient and I never have to coast. And I don't know if that's what we're saying, but it is looking at that group ride and like what is the quality of training you were hoping for? Was it supposed to be very steady zone 2, or was it a certain amount of time doing tempo or threshold or VO2 intervals? And were you getting that? It's possible in a 4-hour ride you are actually getting enough VO2 stimulation, but it would be really dependent on the group. Most groups end up in this middle ground where it's probably a bit too hard for the endurance piece when you are pedaling, way a lot of coasting, and then maybe 1 or 2 like sort of hard intervals, but then not enough hard intervals, right? Where if we did a VO2 session, you'd get maybe 20 minutes of zone 5 sort of VO2 work, but maybe you have 15 minutes, right? It was like one long climb and a bit of pace lining, and you get, not even like you get 10 minutes or something, right?
Right.
Where it's not really enough maybe to make progress. And at first, maybe you would make progress, but that's where you would see that stimulus starting to be not enough
Right.
when someone got more serious, right?
And this is where I'll give you a plug where this, if you are kind of doing a lot of these group rides and you're not really sure like how to kind of fit them into a training plan or where they really fall, this is where even like talking to Peter and having him look at your training plan and actually look at the group rides in Training Peaks or even on Strava, like you can look at it and say like, oh, this actually looks, more like it would be what I would call like a lower intensity, like easy ride, even though you're kind of doing it as
Mm-hmm.
like in place of a hard ride, I would shift it here or shift it this way.
Sure.
Because definitely like between the social aspect, obviously community is one of our 4 C's, which is super important. So, from the community perspective, we're all about the group rides. Like
Yeah.
it's a super important thing. And I mean, if you have any desire to road race, gravel race, and even cyclocross, even mountain bike, kind of no matter what kind of racing you want to do, you do want to be pretty comfortable riding with and around people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that have, shifted to Zwift, like you say, for this efficiency piece and to get the like full 4-hour ride where you're pedaling the whole time. But now you've missed out on, how to stay on someone's wheel and
Right.
like what to do when someone in front of you surges or even when someone in front of you breaks.
Sure. And that's, what we found at this tour, we were reflecting on, not because anyone in our group, we actually had a really good group that stayed together pretty well, but how like a group could fall apart because someone had a lot of fitness, didn't have a lot of fitness, and then on the climb would get dropped. That's what you would think would happen. But then because these are like mountainous roads, we had a bit of wet weather. On some of the descents, you could see someone losing 10 minutes even on a
Mm-hmm.
descent, which would be similar in a group ride or something, right? But a lot of clients, they say, oh, I'm not competitive, so I don't really need to do group rides. But if their goal is to go on a tour or a fondo or ride with friends somewhere, I would say even bike packing, is going to benefit from some sort of drafting and riding with people from a tactical, we could call that, or skill-based point of view. But there's also, of course, that psychological thing, that social comparison. If you're nervous on race day, then I think number one training target is training with people more. You probably should be the person every day of the week going and riding with someone and just dealing with that. That's, we could call it social anxiety, or it's probably the wrong term, but something like that where you're getting used to it. Maybe there's an aspect of like you don't like doing other people's paces. You like to ride your own perfect pace. So you have to learn how to accelerate and then recover and ride a little
Mm-hmm.
slower and ride a little harder. And I wouldn't do that all year, but you could certainly say, like, I'm planning out a training block to address my limiters. Well, then that might make a lot of
For
sense, right? So
sure.
it is knowing, not that we're vilifying group rides, but that there's, how are you using it? What is the ride you're accessing? Because there's different ways to place it. And that's what you said. You said you maybe look at the week, and if they're all easy, then maybe you need to include a high intensity, really targeted workout on your own. Or what I see more often is you have two pretty hard group rides. It's enough, 40 minutes of moderate work or whatever the benchmark we're putting there. So then for you, it is actually getting those steady zone 2 rides where you are staying aerobic, you are pedaling the whole time. I do think I really, when I think about zone 2, when I think about endurance, it's the legs have to keep moving.
Right, right.
I'm probably over the top with that, but like that's my belief, is like you can't stop pedaling. Very important. So that's where in the group ride, you draft back, you're drafting, you're coasting, we're downhilling. And so you just end up again with that cadence as 0 for huge chunks of the ride.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a 6-hour day and the group's moving well and there's a bunch of hard work, it's not a big deal. But if we're talking about like trying to fit as much training into your busy week as we can, then that's like an obvious place where we could increase the amount of effect you're getting, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, you sort of look at what else you need, and then you can fill in around that. And I think that's an okay way to do it. The other thing I'll do, and this is something we'll do with more of the fit athletes and people with a fair bit of time, is that group ride can certainly be something like a double workout where the morning might be intervals, and then the PM, it's just getting them out to get more hours in. Maybe there's intensity, which we're okay with because that day is a high intensity day because of the intervals in the morning, and it's just more volume, and we're not too picky, right? Like if it's just super easy and social, good. And so we're sort of open a bit to that chaos when, this is those athletes who are maybe going from, we're trying to get like up towards that 18 hours a week, something like that. And so they might do 2 hours in the morning and then 2 hours in the PM, right? When everyone's done work, they might train, at 5 o'clock with the 5 o'clock group ride and just add that on top. That's a bit of a like niche example, but that would be another place where the group ride actually could be really nice. And that's something I even try and do a little bit when we can with our Tuesday. We have a gravel society is on Tuesday night, so it's a pretty solid ride, really. Usually the people are pretty good on it, but mostly for the social and just because I won't train more. I'm very lazy with my volume these days.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, no, I think that all makes a lot of sense. Definitely just something to be very careful with. And I mean, there is the like when your goal race is coming up, if you
You might need to skip it for
you
a
might
month.
need to skip a
Yeah,
couple weeks of
yeah.
it and really focus in on the workouts you need to get in. Particularly, often as we're talking about group rides, I think we've been kind of referring to a lot more of like the group road ride, gravel rides as we're talking here.
Mm-hmm.
So if your goal is something Leadville-ish or something, a mountain bike race or something, like you probably do need to spend more time on your mountain bike and less time on the road rides with friends. And I mean, did
Yeah.
it like the mountain bike rides with friends, I think are actually the trickiest of all of the group rides.
Very hard to get a good person to ride with.
And not necessarily good in that like they're really good in
no,
that like
just the
you're
same.
actually matched.
Yeah, mountain bike group rides, there's often way too much stopping to like let people catch up and talk at, every trailhead and look at the trail forks to see where we're going. And
So
Yeah,
I'd say that
it's
one is almost certainly, and if you're doing a mountain bike group ride, you're probably going to need to either add more at the end or at the beginning, or do it as a double and it's your easy thing, which we do a lot in the
or
summer.
extend. Like I'll do intervals and then meet friends to
Yeah.
ride longer, especially when I'm doing a longer thing like that. It is nice. I'm lucky. I have a fair number of friends that are, pretty good riders, and like to ride and then talk afterwards. More, we talk during too, but
Oh,
yeah,
that's maybe actually a really good tip is just like as you are thinking through who to ride with, especially when it is these groups of like twos or threes, it's totally okay to set those expectations, right? Like,
yeah,
hey guys, I want to do this 90-minute mountain bike ride, no stops. Like, here's the route I want to do. We'll chat at the end, but like that's my plan. And, more often than not, people are totally fine with it. It's just when you fail to set the expectations when you're the
sure.
one kind of presenting everyone with the group ride, that's I think when you get into trouble and are unable to really nail your training.
For sure. Yeah, those expectations and reality should align. Probably the last thing then is just, this idea that the group ride can certainly be the intensity for the week. Where people often get in trouble is they don't let it be the intensity. They try and add their intervals. They
Mm-hmm.
do the group ride on Tuesday and then they move the intervals to Wednesday. And then there's also intervals on Thursday. And then, somehow they're also doing a group ride Friday. And then there was intervals on Saturday. And that means every day of the week was basically hard, right? And again, the group ride might not be super hard, but if it's pushing you and you see, okay, yeah, like I achieved close to my max heart rate, the rest of the ride might have been easy, but you did activate, you did like go very hard. It could work for a while, but again, that's something that when I consult with people, you'll look at every single ride of the week, they hit almost their max heart rate, right? And it's, I don't know. I don't usually see that end super well. That's where we need to have some what Steven Seiler would call like intensity discipline, and you need to um, ride steady and have some endurance days in there, right? So it is some discipline to do that.
For sure. Okay, perfect. Let's hit the other question around training plans. So this one is just a quick question regarding strength. This is very specific to our plans. This guy says, you noticed you don't include any strength training in the build phase plan. Is this deliberate? Um, just didn't see it anywhere. They have a lot of experience with lifting. Lifting is part of their normal routine. So just kind of wondering how to think about programming strength, if it's not in the training plan. So I think
Mm-hmm.
first, let's just talk about, where does strength make sense? Or, maybe why don't you have strength in that training plan?
Sure. So I think this is the like XCO build plan, if I'm not mistaken, they're talking about. So, pretty specific build plan. There's a fair bit of intensity in this plan, if I recall.
So when you say build plan, like where is that in the context of racing?
So
Like,
I think it's 3 weeks, 3 months out from your like nationals or whatever.
okay, so for example, if you have nationals July 1st, this plan would start.
So it'd be May, June, July
Okay.
for like a July nationals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good one. It sort of goes from longer VO2 styled and then a little shorter VO2 styled and then like a little, I would say it's fairly traditional in a lot of ways, but it's pretty intense. Like it works really well, but it's a pretty hard set of 12 months.
Right.
No, why can I not talk
12
about
weeks.
durations?
Weeks. Whew.
12 weeks, 3 months. Very, a lot of mountain biking. It's specific. It's what is a 90-minute mountain bike race? It's very intense mountain biking. So there's a lot of technical work encouraged, a lot of time off road.
And I think with a lot of our training plans, we are very like cautious around making them with a lot of hours because most people just don't have, 20 hours a week to train. So I
Sure.
think whenever you're building the plans, you're building them almost as lean as possible. Like
Hmm.
a lot of them will have, ranges for time on bike and stuff, but you're really planning them with like busy executive in mind, like someone who actually has, work, family, like a lot of other stuff.
Hmm.
So sure, you could throw in, you know, tons more volume or, kitchen sink of strength training, mobility, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
a lot of the time we're really trying to think about like what is the most important stuff to happen. And that's what it's focused on.
Right. And remember, like, general audience, yes, targeted for masters adults with work. So you're exactly right. The hours are almost always, low week maybe in the sixes, high week maybe up to 12, maybe a 14, but always with huge ranges. Every fourth week, there's going to usually in most plans I build, will have sort of like an option, like big adventure day, which lets you go sort of between 2 and 5 hours, and really push that duration up to finish the block. And there'll be a lot of like weekend endurance ones that might say 2 to 4 hours or something like that. But I tend to, be on the lower end of that in the actual prescription. But there's always that range so that if someone is, able to train a lot, then they can certainly push more if they want, right? And that's, again, the general plan has to accommodate a lot of different things. So that's the idea. So this plan just has, I think, just core built into it. There's some core. I think there's some yoga suggested. Some light walking. So it fits with our general idea, but it is getting very specific. And to the question of like, why is there not heavy strength training during this phase? It's not that you couldn't, but the general cyclist will not do any strength training probably. Not that I don't believe in it, but it's also just trying to accommodate what the general mountain biker is going to do.
Right.
And without knowing who is doing the plan, because there's a lot of vibration, a lot of strength required, a lot of VO2 stuff going on, hill intervals, the bet is that they're probably not going to do it. Now, if someone was just like a really experienced strength trainer, I don't think it would be wrong to include 1 or 2 short workouts, something like even like an easy strength, 2 sets of 5, 3 sets of 3, something like that. Not necessarily pushing the weight throughout this plan, but letting it almost be maintained, control the intensity, but keep the volume lower so that there isn't fatigue, right? That would be the thing, is if you have any muscular fatigue from strength going into these intervals, it's just, you're going to feel like junk a lot of the time. So I think if you were maintaining, I don't see any problem with that, and that would be very typical. But yeah, that's the idea, is that it's just sort of a general one, and the demands from the mountain biking are quite high to do it well. So this is where it gets into, like, for a specific person, if we spoke about it and what their usual routine and what they want, we might, even reduce some of the bike stuff, some of the mountain biking. We might drop a mountain bike day or something to put in a bit more strength. And I don't know that would be the wrong answer, right? It's not to say that it's worse. It's just different. And there's many ways that we can get to that destination, right, of that XCO race. I had another thought.
Well, I think, again, if you're someone who that actually is very intriguing for you, you want strength there, if you're like me, you're a runner, you'd rather run a couple days or something like that. That's definitely where booking a consult or something and actually having a coach really like help you kind of figure out how to finesse the plan, like which workouts actually make sense to swap, which workouts actually are the most important ones that absolutely need to stay in and shouldn't get swapped out with a strength workout. I know for me, it's probably the ones that I don't want to do that I'd rather run are probably the ones that I would need to keep in there the most.
Right. And I guess the caution would be, you'll see a lot of plan hopping. So people who buy these stock plans often are like, they buy a bunch.
Or plan stacking.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. But, they're buying a lot of plans at once, and they're comparing them, and they're picking from them maybe. But but they're not finishing a plan. And so this is a thing Dan John talks a lot about, is like, you got to finish the plan, and then you'll learn something. You might learn that you like something or you don't like something, but you can't start and not finish. And so, like, when you start a plan, start with the intention of finishing the plan.
And isn't Dan John also the, like, everything works for 6 weeks?
Yes.
So it might not seem like it, but trust me, every plan is going to work great for 6 weeks.
Right.
And then what's the Frank Overton, like the
follow the effing plan, FTFP.
FTFP. Follow the effing plan.
Right. Right. So there is that. Now, to this specific question, there is an interesting thing with the stock plans, which I'll admit we don't really have like a perfect solution for. But there's sort of, if you start training in the fall, you do our base plan, our wildly popular off-road base plan.
Wildly popular.
3 months. So we're going to go, in this case, I think this might have been even started in September, but let's say October, November, December. Holidays take a week or two. Then you couldn't really start this, but maybe you would if you were going to race in May. Like, I guess you could start this plan, but if you went January, February, March with this off-road build plan, we're only in March. So if you're thinking of like going to the US Cups or something in March, maybe that would work. But I think what I'm getting at is there's probably 3 months in the middle there where you maybe have to do more base, which is very common. I love this solution because that's 6 months of good, fitness training, right? We can include intensity. We can do lots of different things, but there's 3 months there where what are you going to do? And so for this athlete, I would suggest we did a 3 month plan. That's what I'll probably email this person back because I haven't yet. and say like, let's do a 3-month plan and do heavy strength training and just keep the bike training probably similar. Like don't load the bike training too much. The off-road base finishes with a bit of tempo sweet spot. So we'll play with that. We'll play with some speed skill cadence stuff, maybe sprinkle some VO2 in there a little bit because it starts getting old doing, longer stuff by the time we've been doing it for 3 months. But that's what I would say is, in the base plan, we do AA strength, anatomical adaptation. So it goes sort of 8 to 12 reps, your classic sort of strength training. It works, as Molly says, for 6 weeks, might even work for 12. Then we've laid that beautiful foundation. Body is working very well. We've recovered from the off-road racing season. That would be the period I would put this in. But again, this is a specific thing that I hesitate to say we're going to build a like off-road base plan number 2 to put in the middle, because I think we're getting too nitty gritty. Like so many people just do the off-road base plan for January, February, March, and then they do our build plan for May, June, July, or April, May, June. And it works great, right? So it's just like, I love these enthusiastic people, but the enthusiastic people often need that like a little bit more customized approach.
For sure, yeah. Love that. All right. Hopefully that helps. I'm like, there we go, nailed it.
Well, there you go. And this has been a plans one. So why don't we say, we have a code on every one of our plans in the Training Peaks store. Also, it's on our store shop page on consummateathlete.com. But you'll check out on Training Peaks. And so there is a code on every one of those for CA25, and that gives you 25% off any plan in the Training Peaks store. Yeah.
It's a good deal. All right, CA25, and we will include links to everything we talked about in the show notes. We'll include kind of the couple plans.
We'll include those 2 plans, including the wildly popular off-road base plan.
I really want to make like a Rex Goliath wine joke here. Like 47 roosters can't be wrong. You can tell we're the uncultured ones who were on this like wine tour, and
we were holding in Rex Goliath jokes, and I don't know if anyone gets the jokes about Rex Goliath.
If you do, please hit us up over on Instagram at Consummate Athlete. If you have other questions, probably not about Rex Goliath. We don't really know how many gold medals they've won.
Rex Goliath, I think, had 100 gold medals. He was a 47-pound rooster.
I do love that these wine bottles just talk about how many gold medals the giant rooster on them won.
Yes.
But anyway, consummateathlete.com. We have a contact page. Find us over on social media at Consummate Athlete. I'm at Molly J. Herford. Peter's at Peter Glassford. Thanks so much, as always, for tuning in. Hit us up with more questions and have a great week of training. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.